Thanks to everybody for joining us today. As Ron said, my name is Jen Easterly. I'm the director of CISA. As you may know, CISA is the newest agency in the federal government, stood up 6 years ago to play two key roles. We serve as America's cyber defense agency and as the national coordinator for critical infrastructure security and resilience, charged to protect and defend the cyber and physical infrastructure that Americans rely on every hour of every day for water and power and healthcare and finance and transportation and communication, and the infrastructure that Americans use to cast their votes and ensure that those votes are counted as cast. In the aftermath of Russian attempts to interfere and influence the 2016 presidential election, election infrastructure was for the first time designated as critical infrastructure, and CISA was designated as the lead federal government agency for election infrastructure security. Over the course of the last 3+ years, I have spent an enormous amount of my time traveling the country, working with election officials of both parties. I know how tirelessly they work to ensure that every one of their votes, citizens' votes, are counted as cast. It's why I have so much confidence in the security and integrity of our election infrastructure. The reality is, election infrastructure has never been more secure. No matter who you vote for, you can have confidence that your vote will be counted as cast. Now, why do I say that? Let me give you several reasons. First of all, the machines that Americans used to cast their votes are not connected to the internet. Second, over 97% of registered voters will cast their ballots in jurisdictions where they will get a paper record that they themselves can verify. Third, election officials over the past 8 years have put in place multiple layers of safeguards to ensure the protection of critical election infrastructure from compromise. And these include enhanced cybersecurity protections, physical access controls, testing of equipment before use for accuracy, and post-election audits. As I said, infrastructure has never been more secure. The other thing you have to consider is that every state runs things differently, because we know that by the Constitution, states run elections, and there are different processes and different equipment. But that decentralized and diverse nature of election infrastructure is actually a great source of resilience, because it means that it's just not possible for a malicious actor to hack into a system in a way that you would have a material impact on the outcome of the presidential election, certainly not without being detected. So while I say election infrastructure has never been more secure, the threat environment that election officials are facing has never been more complex. We're talking about cyber threats like ransomware, distributed denial of service attacks, real threats from our foreign adversaries like Russia and Iran and China, who we know remain intent on using malign influence operations and disinformation for two key goals. First, to undermine American confidence in our election systems, and more broadly, trust in our democratic institutions. And secondly, to stoke partisan discord, to pit Americans against each other. And we cannot allow them to do that. Just as worryingly, election officials are facing very real physical threats, threats of harassment, violence, swatting, bullying, threats to election officials of both parties and their families, largely stemming from unfounded claims that the 2020 election did not represent the will of the American people. We need to recognize that election officials are not faceless bureaucrats. They're our friends, they're our family, they're our neighbors. They are not doing this for pay or for glory. They are serving on the front lines of our democracy because they believe it is the right thing to do. And they deserve our respect, our gratitude, and they deserve to be safe. It's one reason why we at CISA are so proud to stand shoulder to shoulder with election officials across the nation, providing more services in more jurisdictions than ever before, all of which are posted on our CISA.gov Protect 2024 webpage. These resources include hundreds of physical security assessments, hundreds of cybersecurity assessments, hundreds of training sessions and nearly 200 exercises to help election officials reduce the full range of risk to their election systems and processes and infrastructure. And it's why I can say with confidence that the election stakeholder community, election officials, have never been better prepared to deliver safe, secure, free, and fair elections for the American people. All that said, we have to recognize that there will be things that go wrong on election day. In any type of event that involves hundreds of thousands of election workers, tens of thousands of polling places, some 150 million Americans voting, there will be things that go wrong. There will be disruptions. There could be a storm which takes out power to a polling place. There could be a poll worker that forgets the key to opening up the polling location, so it opens late. There could be a ransomware attack on an election office. There could be a bomb threat called into a polling place. The good news is, while these are disruptive, none of these incidents will impact the security and integrity of how Americans cast their ballots or how those ballots are counted as cast. In addition, we know that election officials have been preparing for this election for years. They've been doing training, exercising, and they are prepared and have contingency plans in place for the full range of disruptions. They are prepared to meet the moment on November 5th. Finally, as we know, there is a lot of information out there and a lot of disinformation, really a fire hose of disinformation. And Americans need to know where they can go to get through all of the noise and find the trusted signal. And when it comes to elections, that signal is coming from state and local election officials. They are the experts when it comes to elections. So for any Americans that may be skeptical about the security and integrity of elections, I always say two things: be a part of the process, sign up to be a poll worker or be a poll observer. And if you have any questions, talk to your state or local election officials. They are the experts who can tell you what they do to protect your vote and how they can ensure that your vote will be counted as cast. And that's one of the reasons why we are so appreciative to all of you for your time today. The media, and in particular, local media across America, plays such a vital role in ensuring that you are getting out the accurate information coming from your state and local election officials will be extremely important to ensure that Americans have confidence in the legitimacy of our elections. Thank you for your time. We look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Director Easterly. If you have a question and would like to ask a question, please go to Reactions at the bottom of your screen and click to raise your hand. Once you raise your hand, you'll be entered into the queue in the order that your hand was raised. We'll then ask you to unmute, and you'll please unmute, ask your question, and identify yourself with your name and outlet and ask your question. Oh, right. We have the first two questions. Charlie Wachewski, I hope I got that right. Please unmute yourself and ask your first question.
Yes, good afternoon. Charlie Wojciechowski from WMAQ-TV in Chicago. We're the NBC outlet here. And we've talked a lot about securing the polling places and the ballots, but a lot of people are casting their votes by mail this year. Has there been any special attention given to protecting the mails that may be carrying the ballots?
Yes, absolutely. I'll ask Kate to please weigh in on that.
Charlie, thank you so much. And thank you so much for that question. So returning ballots via mail has been a process that has been around for decades. And what we've continued to see is, just like other parts of the process, continued improvements to ensure the increased security and resilience of that component of American democracy. And we are proud to say that we have been working very closely with our federal government colleagues and the U.S. Postal Inspection Service, who are the lead for ensuring, again, the secure and safe delivery of all election-related mail alongside their U.S. Postal Service colleagues. And what we can say is this year, the understanding of how that process works and having the American people have confidence in that process has been a priority and an area of transparency that we've seen taken on by state and local election officials, encouraging their citizens to understand how that process works, as well as our colleagues at the federal U.S. Postal Service. And just last week, we released a video with our postal inspection colleagues that outlines some of the processes they have in place and steps they take to ensure the security and integrity of ballots being returned by mail.
Thank you, Kate. Meredith Hackler, please unmute yourself, identify yourself, and ask your question.
Hi there, my name is Meredith Hackler. I work for WRTV. We are the ABC affiliate here in Indianapolis. Here in Indiana, our Attorney General, as well as our Secretary of State, has asked the federal government to investigate over 500,000 registered voters to verify their citizenship. What would your message be to those voters who may be concerned that their vote will not count in this upcoming election? And is that something that you guys look into?
Yeah, so thank you so much. So when it comes to the process for ensuring that only eligible Americans are able to have their ballots counted as cast, this is a principal responsibility of every state and local election official that, again, as the director mentioned, having met with hundreds of these folks over the past several months and years, we can tell you the seriousness with which they take that responsibility. And with respect to the specific concerns around non-citizen voting, it is really important that everyone understand that in every state, it is a federal crime for a non-citizen to cast a vote in a federal election. And what the statistics have shown is that this issue is not an issue at scale that has had any material impact on a federal election, but it is still absolutely a priority because even one non-citizen voting is too many. And so again, there are robust processes in place to ensure the security and integrity of our democratic process. And history shows how those processes have been successful in ensuring that, again, only eligible Americans are having an influence on the outcome of democratic races. And we have tremendous confidence in the processes that election officials around the country have in place to ensure that same degree of security and integrity in this year's election.
Thank you, Kate, and thank you for the question. The next question comes from WDIO News.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Alex Sapp. I'm a reporter with WDIO. We are a ABC affiliate in Duluth, Minnesota. My question is, we've certainly seen, especially in the last election, unfortunate reports of election workers being subject to harassment. We're wondering, or what I'm wondering is, are there any resources or protections that the federal government is offering for these situations?
Yeah, thanks for the question. It's just so important. I always try to remind people that election workers are our friends and our neighbors, and they are doing this because they believe in our democracy, and they absolutely deserve to be safe. And so we have put a huge amount of resources from CISA into ensuring that we can help election officials remain safe personally and within the facilities that they're working in. I'll ask Kate to weigh in on specifics.
So across the country, we have our CISA field staff working hand in hand with state and local election officials to do things like physical security assessments of election facilities. And since January of 2023, in support of the 2024 election cycle, CISA staff have conducted nearly 1,200 physical security assessments of those election facilities. We've also conducted a range of trainings focused on physical security issues, things like de-escalation training. So how do you reduce tense situations? Things like security best practices for physical security at polling locations, at election offices, at drop boxes. In addition to all of that, we've also focused on the individual and safety and security of both election officials and election workers, to include poll workers. And we are proud to say that one thing we have coming out this afternoon is actually a training video focused on personal security considerations for election workers. And that builds off of one of our guidance documents that we put out last year, personal security considerations for critical infrastructure workers. And this really just unpacks some of the individual considerations that a worker could have to, again, just enhance their overall individual safety and security. But I'd say we're bringing to bear the full range of in-person trainings, virtual trainings, videos, and physical assessments.
And again, all of that available at CISA.gov on our Protect 2024 website. And then the last thing I'd say is, as we work on exercises around potential scenarios that could happen on election day, we always make sure to have law enforcement there, to include local law enforcement who will really be that first line of defense for any specific threats that may happen on election day.
Thank you. And thank you for the question. What we're going to do is we're going to give everyone their first shot, and then we'll go back to Charlie and Meredith for their second question. So next will be WPTA. Please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Rose Allen from WPTA in Fort Wayne, Indiana. The question that I have for you is, are there any specific threats that you are aware of that have been made towards any Indiana-based voting, whether it's through mail and ballots or any early voting, anything like that?
Yeah, so we wanted to give the national picture of the type of threats that we're seeing across the board. I would defer to you to talk to your state and local election officials around any specifics that they may be seeing. I would mention that across every state, we have a growing field force of physical security advisors, cybersecurity advisors, and we have a terrific election security advisor in Region 5, Spencer Wood, who's been all around the region, making sure that state and local election officials can take advantage of the numerous resources that we have to reduce risk to the full range of threats. So, but on any specifics within the state of Indiana, I would refer you to the chief election official and the local election officials in the state.
Thank you. All right. Next, we'll go to Kat Sandoval. Please introduce yourself or unmute yourself and introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kat Sandoval. I'm a reporter over at Wish TV in Indianapolis. My question is when it comes to safety and protection, is this conversation just blown up because of politics? I know a lot of the people I've spoken to just in the voting centers have mentioned they felt safe when they were voting. I'm curious to know if this has just been a big deal just because of the politics that's been getting out of hand.
So what you are saying, you are hearing is what we want every American to say and to feel. Because the American democratic process, regardless of who you're going to vote for, is this beautiful and incredible thing that should be about hope and opportunity and the future. And so we hope that is exactly how every American does feel and should feel. I think what we have seen, especially coming out of 2020, largely stemming from unfounded claims that the 2020 election did not reflect the will of the American people, is specific threats of harassment and targeted violence targeting election officials themselves and their families. And so that is where we've put tremendous emphasis and resourcing to really support those individuals to be able to ensure the security and safety of those workplaces and of themselves. And I think as Americans, we can all unite to say that that type of activity, the targeting of public servants who are just doing their service to our nation to ensure that every American, regardless of who they're voting for, has the ability to cast their ballot and ensure it is counted as cast, is something incredibly important to all of us. And we all honor the service these public servants are doing, and we should consider them as public heroes.
Thank you, Kate. Thank you for the question. All right, we'll go back to Charlie Wachowski. Please unmute yourself.
Thanks. I think the director talked about a fire hose of misinformation coming at American voters, mainly from foreign sources. Is there any way to affect that spigot? Is there any enforcement tool that CISA has or others in the government have that can kind of redirect this information and protect American voters from it?
Yeah, thank you so much for the question. If you look back over the last few months, I would direct you to, and we're actually going to be putting up a web page, which is sort of a one-stop shop on all of the information that we've put out, working with our intelligence community colleagues and our law enforcement colleagues at the FBI to make sure that Americans are aware of what our foreign adversaries, principally Russia, Iran, and China, are trying to do with their malign influence and disinformations. But you'll also note that there have been disruptions that have been announced by the Department of Justice, as well as sanctions from the Department of Treasury to deter this behavior. And so that is very good news, because you have seen the federal government be more proactive and active in this space than ever before. But there truly is this fire hose of disinformation. And at the end of the day, the most important thing that we're trying to do is to ensure that Americans know where to get accurate information. And that really is their state and local election official. There are great sources out there like NAS.org, the National Association of Secretary of State.org, their Trusted Info 2024 page. There's the Frequently Asked Questions page on the National Association of State Election Directors, NASED.org. And then, of course, there's vote.gov. So, you know, it's not going to be possible to affect the spigot of foreign malign influence and disinformation in a scalable way before our election, but really ensuring that Americans know where to go to get accurate information, and making sure that the media, whether it's national media or local media, when there are questions, when things come up, when the inevitable disruptions come up, or incidents that happen, that you're going to that state and local county official to get the most accurate information.
Thank you, Director. Thank you for the question. WNEM, please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hello, Zaino Mayer with WNEM. We are in Flint and Saginaw, Michigan. Obviously, election security is important everywhere, and I know you said for specific threats or concerns to contact our local and state officials. But on a federal level, for swing states such as Michigan, for example, where the presidential election is expected to be very close, are there any concerns with security in those states? And are there any extra measures being taken on a federal level to make sure those elections are safe and secure?
So I would defer back to any of the specific concerns or requirements to your state and local officials for what is happening there internal to Michigan itself. But going back to what we are seeing at the national level, I think it's important to highlight, as the director mentioned in her opening remarks, our foreign adversaries, specifically Russia, Iran, and China, are continuing to put out effective influence operation campaigns specifically targeting the democratic process and opportunities to sow partisan discord. And some of that we expect to absolutely continue to see in the days before, during, and after the general election. And highlighting that and some of the tactics we've seen in prior cycles, you could absolutely see the opportunity for these foreign adversaries to try to pursue narratives that deliberately undermine the American people's confidence in the outcome of the election, regardless of who wins. And around those narratives, try to stoke some type of physical output or outcome. And we saw this in a statement earlier this summer by the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, who talked about how the Iranian government was pursuing a information narrative or disinformation campaign to stoke protests around the Israel-Gaza conflict. So again, we see the tactics our adversaries are using, and we know their objectives: to undermine American confidence in our democratic institutions and to stoke partisan discord. So I think that is the most important thing that we're trying to get out there, to let the American people know that they are seeing this and to expect it to continue, and that this information is power.
Yeah, and in particular, I think we can expect, and the intelligence community actually declassified, put out a redacted document on Friday that we can send you all the links to talking specifically about what we can expect from our foreign adversaries in the days after the elections. And that line of stoking partisan discord could, of course, lead to inciting violence. And we recognize that in states where the election could be very close, it could take a couple days to get a final result to ensure that it's accurate. And though that's the period where Americans need to come together to be patient and really not to do our adversaries' job for them, because we know they're specifically focused on driving a wedge between the American people and pitting Americans against each other. So at the end of the day, the good news is that in all the so-called battleground states, there are paper records that can be counted and recounted and audited to ensure accuracy. So there will be a proven accurate answer, and it may take a couple days, but that's why it's so important that we're all prepared to be able to resist the forces of our foreign adversaries who want to do us harm.
Thank you, Director. Thank you for the question. Our next question will come again from Meredith Hackler. You're up again. You can unmute yourself.
Yeah, hi there. Meredith Hackler again here with WRTV out of Indianapolis. We've had a lot of conversations about our foreign adversaries, but what is your message to Americans who have concerns about election security due to comments of politicians that are currently running in this election who continue to claim that the 2020 election was stolen both on a national and local level? And how are you guys preparing for post-election day, where there will likely be questions about the legitimacy of the election?
Yeah, thanks so much for the question. So just to be very clear, there is no evidence that malicious actors changed, altered, deleted, or had any material impact on the outcome of the 2020 election. That has been validated time and again, including in dozens of court cases and multiple intel assessment. And as I alluded to, in any state where the margin was close, there were paper records that could be counted and audited to ensure accuracy. So just to be clear, the 2020 election was secure. We understand that there is a lot of information out there coming from a lot of different sources, to include a lot of inaccurate information. You know, in our role as the lead federal government agency for election infrastructure security, very much focused on ensuring that voters have confidence in the security and integrity of their elections. I believe it is really irresponsible for anyone, regardless of party or politics or position, to be spreading inaccurate information about the security of our elections. It is corrosive to our democracy. It does the work of our adversaries for them, and it's leading to very real threats to election workers who are on the front lines of defending our democracy. So I'm an optimist at heart, and I am very much hoping that we're able to get out the accurate information using leveraging folks like you, who now can go to your state and local election officials and get that accurate information so that voters can in fact have confidence in the security and integrity when they go to cast their ballots. To the point about the days after the election, we are very, very focused on that. We know the election is not over when the polls close. The results that you see are unofficial results, and it may take a couple days to a couple weeks to do the final certification that has to be done. But at the end of the day, that's why it's so important, why we're taking our time to put out so much information about what we have done and what election officials have done to ensure that election infrastructure has never been more secure, that election officials have never been better prepared. And all of that is to ensure that Americans do have confidence that no matter who you vote for, you can have confidence that your vote will be counted as cast. And so we really want to arm folks with that, empower folks with that information, as Kate said. So in the days and weeks after the election, we can ensure that there's accurate information getting out there so our foreign adversaries do not undermine the legitimacy of the vote.
Thank you, Director. It appears we are just about out of time, and I don't see any more questions in the box. So, Director Easterly, do you have any closing argument or closing comments?
I just want to thank everybody for taking the time. This is an incredibly important election. I hope voters are excited about it, a chance to choose a new president. As I said at the outset, election infrastructure has never been more secure. We as a nonpartisan, non-political agency know, and election officials know, while elections are political, election security is not. So voters should feel safe and secure and confident that their votes will be counted as cast. And thanks to all of you for helping us get out accurate information about election security. Have a great day.